Good Tuesday. We're glad to be with you again for another Lenten devotional. Well, this time our text comes to us from Matthew, the 25th chapter, verses 14 to 30. This is one of the thematic chapters you'll find in the Gospels. You have a lost and found chapter in Luke 15, where you hear about a lost sheep, a lost coin, and a lost son. This is another thematic chapter. It's a chapter that deals with accountability. And this is one of the well-known parables told by Jesus that we're looking at today, Matthew 25, verses 14 to 30. Recently, my family and I have purchased a board game where the object is to make good investments and to grow a portfolio. Now, I have yet to play it, but I'm sure it'll be interesting. The truth of the matter is, though, that in real investing is no game. And I'm very thankful for the skilled and responsible and trustworthy people that handle our money with the intent to do the best they can for the sake of their clients. In our text for today, we find a master getting ready to leave home on a long journey. And he proceeds to leave his wealth with his servants. Now, in those days, fortune was not in paper. It was in precious metal, in gold and silver, so it was hard to move a lot of gold and silver. And the measure that we're told of in the text is a measure called a talent, which is in weight equal to about 16 years worth of wages. Talent of gold, weight and value was 16 years worth of wages. So this is pretty serious investment going on here. There are three servants in the story. One gets 5 talents, one gets 2, and one receives 1. And they're told to take care of these talents with the unspoken command to invest them wisely and to grow the investment. Now, the servants with 5 and 2 talents, respectively, double their initial investment. The third servant, we're told, does nothing. As a matter of fact, he actually works to bury his talent in the ground. And there is an aspect here where we see him in the Gospel of Matthew telling us that he wraps this talent up in his what we're told is basically his sweat rag, the thing he could have used to mop his brow after honest labor trying to do what his master told him to do. And he uses that to wrap the talent up and put it into the ground. Now, the story ends very well for the first 2. It doesn't end quite as well for this servant who has buried his talent in the ground. But the story tells us some very interesting things, I think. First of all, we need to understand that this story is telling us that God is generous, and he gives generously to the undeserving. Think about this. This is a lot of responsibility, and the master could have left all this with his family, but instead he leaves it with his servants. We also learn from this story that the master goes out of his way to praise his faithful servants. Now, in those days even, masters didn't really praise servants, and yet the master here praises his servants for being responsible and faithful. The real big issue here, though, we need to understand is that the third servant just assumed that the master was not going to require anything of him. He got lazy and he disregarded the master's will. And that's the real threat that all of us have to deal with in our lives. There is a temptation for us to believe that God doesn't really need our faithfulness, so we can just sit back and coast. Well, not so. If we are faithful servants, we're going to do what our master asks us to do for faithful servants, whether our talents are many or whether they are few. Let us pray. Gracious God, thank you for calling us to such a high and holy purpose in your kingdom. Help us to overcome our ambivalence and to trust you in all that we do.